everyone, and welcome to a free family art project with myself. I'm Autumn, the education coordinator here for Studio 23. If you got to see Tara's previous segment right before this, you saw that we are featuring the art of Margaret Colorelli today. And you also would have heard that she is very inspired by the landscapes of Italy. And if you got to see the images also, I should say, you saw that she really has the juxtaposition of, you know, the farmland with like the new wind turbines. So she's got that juxtaposition of old and new in her work. So I thought we would create a landscape, but I thought we'd paint it instead of drawing. But I thought we would do a fun little family landscape that kind of depicts farmland, but also includes the Margaret Colorelli wind turbines. And then also, we're gonna include a little bit of subtractive painting in it too. I don't know if you can see. So we're gonna learn a little bit about subtractive painting. So for supplies, what you're gonna need is some paint, and if you look at the colors I use, I just tried to keep in mind natural colors. You know, so we have blues, we have very gold, like yellow ochres, greens, browns. I think any kind of color you want to use will work great, but just try and keep the fact that we want natural colors in mind. As far as paper goes, I am using cardstock because that's what I had. But any kind of heavy-duty paper, watercolor paper, construction paper, anything like that would work great. And then as far as brushes, you're going to want a big brush to put your paint down on, a little tiny detail brush for the end, and then see if you can find some items to use for the subtractive part of our painting. So I found a spork, I found a little plastic knife, a little straw, and some corrugated cardboard that I'm going to be using for the subtractive element of our painting. And then also to apply the leaves on our tree that's in the foreground there, I thought it would be fun to use a non-traditional brush. So I found this moss that we had sitting around back there, and this just came from the dollar store. So anything like that you have sitting around, you know, would make a really nice little brush, you know, to do the leaves. Don't forget your paper towel. This is going to be messy because it's paint, and you're going to want some water to clean your brush off with. So I think that's all for the supplies. Let me go ahead and adjust the cameras and we'll get going. I think we're in good shape. So let's get going. So to start with, we're gonna do this in layers. So we're gonna start at the top and we're gonna work our way down. But if you see in the original, there's kind of these layers of ground or like strata, right, that we have going on here in the image. And actually, if you look closely, there's colors underneath the paint color that we've used to make this subtractive image. So we're starting with a blue and a white, and then we're gonna do some brown, and then like a green or a teal color. So how we're gonna do that is we're just gonna grab our brush, and we're gonna slap on some paint. This part you don't have to be super careful with, so you're just gonna wanna grab your big brush and get going. Let's see, get a little water. All right, we'll flip this around for you. Here we go. All right, we're just gonna go in, and it's just gonna be a little bit of a wavy line. And then we're just gonna fill in from there. And then to do the very top, I'm gonna swipe some blue and some white together on my brush. And then I'm just gonna go in and fill that in. And then if you want, you can go in and you can blend it back down so it all looks nice and blended. Now when I'm painting, especially when I'm painting like the sky, I like to make sure my brush stroke goes all the way from one side of the paper to the other, because then you can really kind of get the idea of atmosphere. It really lends to the idea of the sky. So that's a little tip for you. You can go in if you want and grab a little more white and start blending that in if you want, you know, up to you. And then I always like to throw another color in there because I always stress to students that the sky is not just blue, it's many colors, right? So throw a little purple in there, and I'm just gonna blend it right in to that blue and white. Oops. All right. I think that's good enough. So now we're just gonna go, let's see, clean my brush, and we're gonna move on to that brown layer. So this is what it's gonna look like when we have our first layer done. Blue, brown, green. All right, so then I'm just gonna grab some brown, do the same exact thing. I'm just gonna go right in. And this layer these don't have to be especially thick, because like I said, we're gonna put some yellow over top of this. We're gonna put some greens over top of this. We're gonna change this up. This is just our under coat. All right, we got a brown. And then for the bottom layer, I want a darker green. So I'm just gonna swipe together at the same time some blue and some green. And I'm just gonna mix that up, and it's gonna make a kind of like teal. And I think that's a good enough color. I just want you to be able to see a different paint color underneath here when we do our subtractive layer. And I'm gonna go in the same exact way and just fill that right in. And that is good enough, I think, for me. So we're gonna let that dry, and I'm gonna move this out of the way. So for the next part would be, once this is all dry, would be the painting and the subtractive painting. And subtractive painting is simply just taking paint away. So what we're gonna we don't so much have to worry about it for the sky. It's really just gonna be the different layers here of the ground. So we're gonna start with the top and work our way down. So we're gonna start with this very gold, ochre yellow color. And I'm just gonna go in, load my brush, and go right over top of the brown that I originally painted here. Now, for this portion, you wanna make sure the paint is a little thicker. One, because then it will take longer to dry, which for this portion, that's kind of something you want. That will be helpful here. But then also, you see less of the brown underneath, and it's just gonna end up looking better for you. So I like to just get a layer on and then really just scoop in more and just really piling it on here. And don't worry so much about how this part of it looks, because like I said, we're gonna do subtractive painting, so we're gonna change it all up. And you can see we've kind of made it look like a field here in this layer. So let's see. All right, and I think that's probably good enough for now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take one of my alternative paint brushes, and I think I'll use the Spork, and I'm just going to go in and I'm going to scrape paint away. That's the subtractive painting method, it's taking paint away. So I'm just gonna go in and I'm gonna do like a up and over method because I really kind of want it to look like the wind is blowing. Kind of what I want you to see is that the wind is blowing and it's moving like maybe some wheat around or something. So I'm just gonna go up and over. And you want to let it go right over onto that blue layer, because then it kind of like, what's the sky? Because then it really does start to look like wheat in a field. And you're just going to keep going over it until you're happy with the amount of lines you have. And I think that's good enough for me. So I think that's looking good. So then from there, I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna add my next layer, which is this light green layer right here. And I'm just going to take some of my green and a little white, because I'm trying to mix up the colors a little bit. You know, I don't want them to all be the same. So we'll do a light green. Green, little white. All right, and then I'm going to go in, and actually, I think I'm actually going to go over top of this a little bit, but that'll be okay. And then again, remember, you really want to load on the paint for this part because we're taking paint away. So it's like the one time with your students where you can say, oh yeah, that's fine to put way too much paint on your paper. All right, got that layer down. And to get those lines like that, those horizontal lines, I just use my corrugated cardboard. I absolutely love corrugated cardboard. You can get some really cool effects with it. So I'm just gonna go in from one end, and I'm gonna pull it all the way to the other end in one swoop. And you get this super cool layer of these lines going on. So that's pretty cool, it's pretty fun. And then for the bottom layer, we're gonna add just that plain green oxide that I have over the top here. And so I'm just gonna grab my brush. And I'm just gonna go in. With that green oxide, I'm gonna make sure and do a nice thick layer. Oh yeah, all right. And then I think I'll go in with my spork again, but I'm gonna do a little different technique. I'm gonna kind of make some wavy lines with it. Just to kind of give the idea of some kind of crop, right? There's something going on there. Because again, I really want this to look like some type of maybe farm field or some kind of farmland. All right, and again, you're gonna wanna do that, as much as you want, as many of those lines as you want. All right, so that's how we do the next layer. You would let that dry, and then you'd be ready for the last layer, which is your foreground and whatever little accents you want to add. So here I did a nice little tree with, not much leaves happening in the foreground. And then I did some wind turbines because I wanted it to really be inspired by Margaret Colorelli's work. And the wind turbines, really remind me of her work. So for that, I think I'll probably still use my big brush for the tree. And instead of holding my brush flat and making a really thick line, I'll probably hold it on its side and make a really thin line. And I'm just going to go in with a little bit of my brown, my burnt umber here, and a little bit of black. All right, and then I'm just going to go in, and I'm going to start with one side. And start making my tree. And the great thing about trees is they're very rarely perfect. So your tree does not need to be perfect either. So you're just going to keep going in, drawing your tree, your branches. The trick to branches, if you're not really familiar with painting branches, is they are wider or bigger the closer they are to the ground or the branch it's connected to, and they get thinner the further out you go. So see how here it's very wide where it's connected, but it's gotten much thinner the further out that I go. Same thing up here. And little branches, big branches, it doesn't really matter. That's kind of the rule of thumb. And really just go for it. Make however many branches you would like. Fill it in. You can always go in with another layer if you want, entirely up to you. If you're concerned about your branches not being small enough, you can always go in with a smaller brush if you need, but again, this doesn't have to be perfect. All right, go in with some little branches, just to kind of give you an idea. All right, good enough, I think. I got the beginnings of a tree going on there. And then I'm gonna go in with my moss that I got from the dollar store. And I am going to use it kind of like a stamp. I'm gonna get some of that brown black I was using. And I think I might dip it in the yellow too. Just see what we can pull up here. And I'm gonna go in and I'm just gonna use it as a stamp and make some leaves. And I don't need a lot because I want it to look like this time of year when there's just really not a lot left on the trees and everything's pretty sparse. So again, not going to do a lot. And if some get stuck to it, I think I'll just add to the look anyways. So I think that's probably even good enough. It looks like a tree in November, I think. So I think that's good. And then for the last step, if you want, you can add your little details in the background. Now they would be silhouetted if they were far away, so that's helpful. If you look at the original, I just have like little silhouettes of the wind turbines, which you would just go ahead and use your small brush, and you're just gonna create these little lines. If you wanna make the wind turbines, you could also make a barn in the background. I mean, really anything that you would see out on a farm, anything that you would see out in the country, you could add as a silhouette in your background. So this is my Margaret Colorelli inspired landscape painting. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you try it yourself, and if you do, of course we want to see what you're working on, so please use the hashtag Studio23OnTheGo so we can see what kind of amazing art you're working on. And that is it for me. Up next is Val with an artist project. I hope you all have an absolutely fantastic weekend, and we'll see you next week. Bye.